There are moments that change a person's life forever without warning. For one successful CEO, that moment did not happen in a boardroom, during a billion-dollar deal, or in front of flashing cameras. It happened on a bright afternoon in an ordinary city park when her little daughter, who had not spoken a single word in nearly 4 years, looked toward a complete stranger and quietly whispered, "She sounds nice." The words were soft enough to disappear into the breeze, but they shattered years of silence in a single heartbeat. The woman froze where she stood, unable to breathe, unable to believe what she had just heard. Every specialist had told her not to expect miracles. Every therapy session had ended with more silence. Yet somehow, a stranger carrying nothing but kindness had reached the place no amount of money ever could. If stories about kindness, hope, and second chances inspire you, consider subscribing to Kindness Hub so you never miss another heartfelt story. Maris Vale had built one of the country's fastest-growing technology companies before turning 40. Business magazines praised her intelligence, investors admired her confidence, and competitors feared her determination. Newspapers often described her as the woman who never lost. Few people knew that every evening, after removing the elegant suits and expensive jewelry, she returned to a quiet house that felt painfully empty despite its beauty. Her greatest success had never been her company. It had been her daughter, 6-year-old Nora. But after losing her father in a tragic highway accident when she was barely 2 years old, Nora slowly stopped speaking. At first everyone believed it was temporary grief. Days became months, and months became years. The cheerful little girl who once laughed at butterflies and sang to birds simply disappeared into silence. Maris invested everything she had into helping her daughter. The world's best therapists, neurologists, psychologists, speech specialists, and child development experts all tried. Some showed progress for a few days before everything returned to silence. Others admitted they had no answers. The diagnosis was always different, but the result remained painfully the same. Nora understood everything around her. She smiled occasionally. She nodded. She hugged her mother every night. But words never came. The endless search exhausted Maris in ways no business challenge ever had. Every failed treatment felt like another promise broken. Friends stopped suggesting new doctors because they had already suggested them all. Relatives quietly accepted that this was simply the family's reality. Employees admired their CEO without realizing she sometimes sat alone in her office during lunch breaks, crying where no one could see. One Saturday afternoon, determined to spend less time surrounded by hospitals and appointments, Maris decided to take Nora to a large botanical park on the edge of the city. The weather was warm but gentle. Children chased bubbles across green lawns while families enjoyed picnics under flowering trees. Birds filled the air with cheerful songs. Maris hoped the peaceful surroundings might at least bring her daughter a little happiness. Nora wandered slowly along a stone path, watching butterflies drift from flower to flower. She stopped often to admire tiny things most adults overlook: a ladybug climbing a leaf, sunlight dancing across a pond, or squirrels racing through branches. Maris watched quietly from a nearby bench, grateful simply to see curiosity in her daughter's eyes. Not far away, a young widowed father named Rowan Mercer spent the afternoon with his 8-year-old daughter, Tessa. Rowan worked as a city bus mechanic, earning just enough to provide a modest but loving home. Since losing his wife to a sudden illness 3 years earlier, every day had become a balancing act between work, parenting, and healing. He often worried that he wasn't enough for his daughter, yet Tessa never complained. Together they had learned that happiness rarely depended on expensive things. It was found in shared sandwiches, homemade lemonade, and afternoons spent feeding ducks. Tessa noticed Nora standing alone beside a flower bed. Rather than rushing over noisily like many children, she quietly sat nearby and began sketching butterflies in a notebook. She smiled warmly without expecting anything in return. Nora watched with quiet fascination. Rowan approached slowly, carrying 2 paper cups of fresh lemonade. He handed one to Tessa and gently placed the other on the bench near Nora before stepping back several feet. There was no pressure, no awkward questions, no attempt to force conversation. His simple gesture carried nothing but kindness. Maris observed everything carefully. Most strangers reacted to Nora with uncomfortable sympathy or endless questions. Rowan did neither. He simply respected the little girl's silence as though it deserved dignity instead of fixing. After several peaceful minutes, Rowan complimented his own daughter for drawing such beautiful butterflies. His voice was calm, gentle, and filled with genuine warmth. Then something unimaginable happened. Nora slowly looked toward Rowan, her tiny lips trembled. Almost silently, she whispered, "She sounds nice." The sentence contained only 3 words. To everyone else nearby, they might have sounded ordinary. To Maris, they sounded like the greatest miracle she had ever witnessed. Time seemed to stop. Her knees weakened. Tears instantly blurred her vision. She stared at her daughter in complete disbelief, wondering if exhaustion had made her imagine the impossible. But Nora looked calmly toward Tessa once again, confirming the moment was real. Maris rushed forward, embracing her daughter while struggling to control overwhelming emotion. Years of heartbreak, fear, and unanswered prayers flooded out in silent tears. Rowan stood frozen himself, unsure why everyone suddenly appeared so emotional until Maris quietly explained that those were the first spoken words her daughter had uttered in years. Neither Rowan nor Tessa celebrated dramatically. They simply smiled with gentle gratitude, careful not to overwhelm the fragile moment. Somehow their quiet understanding made the miracle feel even more meaningful. Over the following weeks, Maris found herself returning to the same park every Saturday afternoon. Officially, she claimed it was because Nora enjoyed the gardens. Secretly, she hoped they would meet Rowan and Tessa again. They always did. Nothing was planned, nothing felt forced. The 4 of them simply shared peaceful afternoons watching ducks, feeding birds, sketching flowers, or walking shaded trails. Rowan never treated Nora like a patient. He never focused on what she could not do. Instead, he included her naturally in every activity, giving her space to participate however she wished. Slowly, tiny changes appeared. Nora began smiling more often, then came another word. A week later, 2 more. Soon she quietly answered simple questions using short sentences. Her therapists could hardly explain the progress. Clinical notes filled with cautious optimism replaced years of disappointment. They observed that Nora appeared emotionally safe in environments without pressure or expectations. The simple acceptance she experienced around Rowan and Tessa seemed to unlock something that intensive therapy never reached. Maris couldn't stop thinking about that realization. For years she had tried to heal her daughter through solutions money could buy, yet healing had quietly arrived through ordinary kindness freely given. Meanwhile, Rowan remained completely unaware of how deeply his presence had affected their lives. He never sought recognition or gratitude. He believed children simply deserved patience because life was already difficult enough. Months passed. Nora eventually spoke in complete conversations. The first time she laughed aloud while chasing butterflies with Tessa. Maris had to look away so her daughter wouldn't notice the tears streaming down her face. Business success no longer felt like the center of Maris's identity. She delegated more responsibilities to trusted executives and spent increasing time enjoying ordinary family moments. She discovered that happiness often lived in places untouched by ambition. One sunny afternoon, Nora surprised everyone again. She handed Rowan a carefully folded drawing. It showed 4 people standing beneath a flowering tree. Above them she had written, in slightly uneven handwriting, "My safe place." Rowan looked at the picture for several seconds before quietly thanking her. No expensive award, promotion, or recognition could ever equal receiving such trust from a child who had once hidden behind complete silence. Maris realized then that gratitude could never fully repay kindness. It could only be passed forward. Inspired by her daughter's transformation, she created a charitable foundation supporting free emotional recovery programs for grieving children whose families could never afford specialized therapy. Instead of focusing only on medical treatment, the programs emphasized safe relationships, community, creativity, nature, and compassionate mentorship. She insisted every center include large gardens similar to the park where Nora had spoken. Again, within 2 years, hundreds of families benefited from the program. Many children found hope, many parents found strength. Many volunteers discovered that listening could sometimes heal more deeply than speaking. Rowan continued repairing buses every weekday morning. He refused offers of executive positions within Maris's company because he genuinely loved honest work. What mattered most to him was being present for Tessa each afternoon. Maris admired that quiet integrity more than any impressive resume. Their friendship slowly became something even stronger. Not through dramatic declarations, but through ordinary acts repeated day after day. Shared lunches. School events. Birthday celebrations. Weekend walks beneath the same flowering trees where everything had begun. The greatest miracle, however, remained wonderfully simple. One bright spring morning, Nora held both Rowan's and her mother's hands while walking through the botanical garden. She looked up with joyful eyes and spoke clearly, confidently, and without fear. She thanked Rowan for making the world feel safe again. There were no reporters. No television cameras. No applause, only birds singing overhead, warm sunlight filtering through green leaves, and 4 grateful hearts understanding that life's greatest blessings rarely announce themselves with noise. They arrive quietly, they stay because of kindness, and they change everything forever. If this story touched your heart, thank you for spending these moments with Kindness Hub. We hope stories like this remind you that even the smallest act of compassion can become someone's greatest turning point. Special request: tell us in the comments about one small act of kindness that changed your life or someone else's. As the family walked farther down the flower-lined path, their laughter blended with the sounds of children playing and birds singing beneath the afternoon sun. Maris finally understood that true wealth was never measured by company valuations or luxurious homes. It was measured by the people who stayed, the hearts they healed, and the hope they shared. Nora had found her voice, Rowan and Tessa had found a family they never expected, and 4 ordinary lives became forever connected because one stranger chose kindness over curiosity. Sometimes the greatest miracles begin with just a few gentle words, spoken at exactly the right moment, to exactly the right heart. If you'd like, I can also create a matching SEO package, thumbnail concept, and viral-friendly title variations for this story.